Welcome to the After Work Hangout, the podcast where you'll hear why and how everyday people shifted their careers to meet their personal needs. I'm your host, Crystal Lee. In Season 1, we explored topics related to work and money. And now in Season 2, new guests join me to chat about work and health. From practical tips to heartfelt stories, we hope you'll get inspired and make the moves that are right for you. Welcome, Myriam. Thanks for joining the After Work Hangout.
Thanks, Crystal. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited to dive into the conversation with you today because this season we're chatting about work and health. And I want to invite you to provide a relational lens to this conversation. For folks who are listening, Myriam Verzat is a conflict transformation consultant at Reconnect. And her services span a wide range of things, everything from nonviolent communication training to mediation, facilitation, and she's also an artist, among many other things. I know you through community engagement activities in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, and you're so active and out there, always facilitating connections among folks. It comes so naturally to you, and I think it makes a lot of sense given the professional work that you do. But I'm super curious if you might share a little bit about how you came to become a conflict transformation consultant and what exactly is it?
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. My journey didn't start there really. I was more passionate about science growing up, and I did actually science studies. I did an engineer school for a couple of years, and then I did a master's in science communication. And so I was really passionate about it was already about communicating things in a way that can be easier to understand, but mostly about science and understanding the world around us. So for a couple of years I worked in that field of science communication and making like websites or video games or exhibitions about science. So that was kind of my first career in some ways. So, but I've always been interested in human relationships, very passionate about it. I come from a family that is very relational, a big family. We're like 16 cousins and all living, spending holidays together, 30 people in the same big house. So I've been really surrounded by relationship my whole life. And I got really interested in this work. And I said, Dalda, sorry, many times in my training, but because of my dad, who found the book of Marshall Rosenberg, who's the person who created the body of work that I'm certified in, that is called Nonviolent Communication. And he brought the book for a family holiday, and he just tried to use these communication methods with us. And we were all teenagers and kind of not really interested in this new way of speaking of a dad. So I was not interested at first, but I kind of maybe years later decided to read the book and got really interested in it.
Okay, this is really interesting because it sounds like, I imagine teenagers probably not that interested in communication skills, but your dad was trying to apply these certain ways of communicating. Did you pick it up then and there, or did you find your way to the style of communication later on when you did the scientific communication? Or I'm curious how those finally intersected to become your current career path.
I think I was already back then interested in, in relationship in general, and of course romantic relationship because I was a teenager, but also in navigating friendships. So I think it was already then that I was, really interested in the quality of relationship. And I think my family was putting a lot of effort and energy in that too. My parents were very community driven. We had always people around, and coming from a big family that had very diverse viewpoints. Well, literally in my family politically are, very, very diverse. And so it was part of growing up, finding ways to stay connected through a lot of differences. So I did read the book not long after that. But at that time I was like, oh yeah, I've got this. I know exactly what it is and I know how to do it. And it's kind of stopped there, my curiosity of it. And it took me years to kind of go more deep into it. But even those first ideas that I read in the book, I think I started using them quite quickly in the world of science communication. So my first job was as researcher and writer of content for scientific projects like exhibitions about science or video games or things like that. But quickly, I was mainly doing just the research and the writing, but my boss asked me to start doing project management and taking bigger and bigger roles. And I was like, pretty brand new to the work market and kind of surprised that she would ask me to take on those leads. And I did kind of like ask her about it. And she told me that I was really good with relationship. I was really good with listening to people. I was really good with listening with clients. And she started bringing me in a lot of like spaces with direct connection with clients
Hmm.
because part of project management is really about that and hearing the client's needs and being able to, go a little bit beyond what they're telling you to really understand what's behind it and helping them feel heard. And so I really believe that some of this, even the first skills that I learned through my family and through reading these books and through my interest in relationship played a role in my earlier career. And then I just got more and more interested really into human dynamics, and I realized I was more interested in humans than in science in general. But
Oh, okay.
it was kind of more the science of relationship that I felt drawn to. I wanted to learn more about. And still now, when I just reading books, like almost all my books are about that, and my conversations are about that. So it became
That's
a
so
passion.
interesting. And you make me think because I work with a lot of job seekers and career changers and so forth. And especially nowadays, like use of AI and technology, there's often conversation around what is the role of people when we live in such a landscape. And it's the human connections and relationships, right? Like we just can't replace that right now. And no matter what industry or sector or role you're in, that will always be an aspect of what you do, whether you are a technical person or not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been thinking about that a lot actually. And I thought, oh, I did choose an area of work that might still be needed for a really long time. That
Oh,
question of
for
like,
sure.
yeah, relationships and conflict too. I was like, oh, I don't think there's a day where there will not be conflict anymore. I'm good to go.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So is it okay? Maybe I would love to hear more about that. Like who do you work with? Like, how do you work with them? Do you work for organizations or individuals? What does it look like?
So I have kind of two streams of work. I have workshops that I give for individuals that are more. Yeah, anybody who's interested in improving their relationships with their partner, with their parents, family, friends. And so those are workshops that I give regularly throughout the year. I have a level one, a level two, and I'm also offering soon an immersion program. And so, yeah, this is really more for personal life. And I have developed in the last couple of years also a stream of work in the professional life. And part of it is because that's an area that I started pretty early on applying it and seeing the benefits of applying nonviolent communication in that space, but also because people spend a lot of their life at work. And that I really believe that the quality of the relationship we have at work have a huge impact on the quality of our lives. And even if we can improve even just a little bit that quality of relationship, that can be really big in people's lives. And a lot of people that I hear that talk positively about their work, they talk about their colleagues. They talk
Yes.
about like, oh my gosh, I love the people I work with. They're so nice. We have this thing we do together. And that's what people talk about. So and who I work with small, medium organizations. I came to work a lot with organizations that are in the field of like human service. So either working with disabilities or with elders or that are mostly kind of relationship oriented organizations. But I have worked with all kinds of organizations in the tech industry too, where sometimes people lack a little bit more those kind of really human connection skills. So in the government too, kind of spaces. Really, I often say that like as long as they're humans, this work has like a value,
Yeah.
because it is about human relationships and the patterns of relationships are very similar in some ways wherever we go.
Yeah. For transparency, I have taken part in your level one training. So I am familiar with some of the foundational components. And when I tell people I've been learning nonviolent communication, they often like kind of look at me confused. They're like, how are you being violent? And this is like, why are you being violent? And now you have to be nonviolent. And so I'm like, oh, it's also called authentic communication or compassionate communication. And maybe we should backtrack a little bit and just like maybe share foundationally, how would you describe compassionate communication, authentic communication? We're going to use it interchangeably with nonviolent communication.
Yeah. Thank you. It's important for me to use the word, at least of what the work I'm doing it is based on, which is nonviolent communication, because it has been developed by Marshall Rosenberg, and this is how he named it. And I use other terms because, as you say, I also receive sometimes resistance to the word nonviolent communication because it includes the word violent in it. So we sometimes immediately have a resistance to even like the idea that we might be violent in our language, which I think we are sometimes. But this work has been developed by this man who was like a psychologist, doctor, and it's not that he completely invented, totally new communication style, but he really one of the key idea that he developed that I find fascinating is the idea that behind everything we do or say, express, any of our actions, even some of our beliefs, behind that are universal needs. They're like deeper reasons why we do what we do. And that the idea of connecting to those deeper reasons can really help in human communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so he developed this model that in some ways simplifies the different types of thing that we're trying to say when we communicate, but actually distinguish them.
Mm-hmm.
And he created this four steps model to distinguish those different elements and have more consciousness of what am I saying? What do I want to say? And and how to say it in a way that the other person can actually connect with me
Right.
versus immediately disconnect.
Yeah. I think so often we are reactive, right? We just kind of say things and or like patterns that we don't really examine, and we just are very reactive and automatic in what we say and what we do. And in a workplace, and as a career coach, I often chat with folks. They're considering looking for a new job or changing careers completely because they're unhappy at work. And the season we're talking about work and health, and why I want to chat about relationships is because often folks are unhappy and super stressed because of the relationships at work, because of conflict, because of, just culture of how things are communicated and handled. And we spend so much time at work. If the quality of our relationships at work could be improved, I bet there's so many people who would rather stay and not go through the hassle of looking for a new job or new career.
Absolutely. One of the big challenge that is true too is that we often don't choose who we work with. And that's the reality that is difficult to navigate because if you were telling me like now you're going to live with this person and just share all the way that you navigate taking care of a house and everything and you're just not going to choose them, like I would never say yes to that. But in some ways in workplaces we agree to be working and nonstop with people that
Mhm.
we haven't chosen and with whom sometimes we have very different way of working and of doing things and of expressing ourselves. And I also find that we're not given very much time to build that relationship and to
Mm,
build that how we're going to work together.
right.
And when I think about like that's one thing that I often tell people when they talk to me about, relationship challenges at work is like, can you create a time and space to just talk about how are we working together? Not about the work, about the way we're working, about the way we're communicating. Does it work for you the way that I send you email or the frequency I send you email at? Does it work for you the way we're like having our meetings right now, And creating this time and space to talk about the way we're working is already kind of can be really big in the way we navigate difficult relationships at work.
I imagine that would take the workplace or the people within the workplace to value that conversation, to understand the benefits of having those conversations. And ideally, that happens at the very start of your work at a certain place. But let's say folks are already in a workplace for a while and there is friction. Like how scary it is to say, everyone, let's pause and let's like have a conversation about how things are going. It's easy to feel defensive in that moment, or there's so many things I can imagine that would create barriers to having that conversation. So do you have any tips of like how to like start nudging things towards that direction to have those conversations? Any practical tips from your side?
Yeah. Well, one other thing I would say is to start small. It means to start with things that are actually not the biggest deal. Because one of the things is we're scared that if we say anything, it will go wrong. It will go wrong. The conflict will escalate. We'll get disconnected. We might even get angry. And then we put our job at risk,
Yep.
pretty much. Right. So, of course, who would want to go that route if there's no certainty that it's going to go well?
Hmm.
Right. And so the capacity to trust that is going to go well for our nervous system, we need proof that it's going to happen. So I really believe in the idea of scaffolding and of like starting with tiny little conflict, little things that are not the biggest deal. Maybe it's about the coffee machine and like putting back the milk at that spot, or that are actually not triggering me that much, but that I believe I might have the capacity to enter in a dialogue with somebody. And every time I have a small win in like addressing something and moving past it and finding an agreement with somebody, I build a trust in my own capacity, but also in the relationship capacity.
Hmm.
So that would be one little advice is like start with a small thing, like a really tiny thing that maybe you knows you, it's not the biggest deal, but you'd like to have like a little chat with the person around.
Yeah.
And I find in my own working relationships, I have done that kind of slowly trying to talk about harder and harder things until like one of my co-facilitator, Warren, for example, I co-facilitate with him a lot. We reached a point where I feel we can talk about pretty much anything and we trust that we'll get to the other side because we have over and over again,
Right.
right? So starting with little steps. And then the second thing that I think we tend to not do very much is to actually take the time to figure out why does this matter to me? Not because like it's the right thing to do, not because like it should be done that way, but taking responsibility of like, why does it matter to me? How can I own that? And how can I clarify that so that I can name it in a way that is self responsible?
Hmm.
Because when I name something that is not detached from blame of like you're doing something wrong, but where I'm just saying like that makes my life more wonderful when, things are done that way. And I'm taking responsibility that this is me, it's not everybody,
Hmm.
that somebody else might want something different or might be okay with how things are. But this is my thing.
Hmm.
And I can name and articulate it. The chance that I will be heard and understood is much higher.
Yeah.
So in some ways, taking that time can really, even in me, like when I land onto something and I'm like, oh, this is why it matters. I feel more trust in my capacity to come and to present it and to be like, hey, that's why that's important. Maybe it's important for me. Maybe it's important for the people we serve. Maybe it's like I really want this process to be done in that way because I know that the client, when they see, the document written in that way, it's so much more clear for them.
Right.
That's what matters. So that would be a second tip is like trying to articulate really clearly for yourself first. What do you want and why do you want it that way?
Yeah. And that goes back to not being reactive. You have to like pull back and like connect with yourself to identify that need in order to then communicate. In many ways, like that's the hardest work is to
Yeah.
process what is going on inside me that's making me so stressed or unhappy or frustrated. And if we don't practice that self reflection and self discovery, like that can be the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a quick example of like, let's say, because I know people really like to hear like concrete things, right? Let's say that you're bothered because your work colleague is asking you like very concrete tech stuff that to you is just obvious, but they may be older than you and they just kind of need support and you just being annoyed every time because they just ask you this really simple thing, that everybody knows how to do like in Zoom doing whatever, but again, it's kind of like for me, the first step is to come back to me and be like, okay, I am triggered by that. That's not everybody. Some other people, they have so much patience and they're so happy to explain, tech stuff to others. Why does it bother me? And I keep asking myself, why? Until I get more to the root of like, oh, it's something about the imbalance in that relationship, maybe. I feel like this person asking me a lot of information, but I don't feel it's balanced in the other way around where I can ask them something. And so I need more balance. Maybe that's what it is at the heart of it, you know?
Hmm.
So when I know that, then I often go to a place where I try to think, let's say I will not change this person. That's always a good assumption to start
Assume
with,
that.
because let's assume that. Let's start from that, What can I do? And I think particularly in the workplace, it's helpful because we do not choose most of the time our work colleagues. So let's say my work colleague does not change, and this is the way they do things, and this is the way they will keep doing things. What can I do that will help me feel more comfortable with the situation, that will increase my level of ease in what's going on? Or maybe if we take this situation and the person constantly asks me this, I can think about, oh, if I want to rebalance, what can I ask them that I know they're good at, that they could also support me with,
Oh,
that
okay.
will help rebalance that dynamic. If balance
Yeah.
is what I need is. But it will not change that they will not tomorrow learn, be smarter tech-wise.
Yeah.
And they're right next to me, and I'm the first person they might want to ask
Yeah.
to some
And
help.
there can be so many needs, right? Maybe efficiency, you find that like it's slowing you down for other things, or like you really have a need to focus, and every time somebody asks you a
Yeah.
question, you're pulled out of the focus, right? There can be so many needs.
Exactly. So if the focus is the need is focus, for example, what can I do? I could say, hey, I noticed like I need the next half hour to completely focus on that. Would you? And I would love to help you afterwards with any kind of tech thing. If you're able to pause for that time while I focus on this, and then I will pause at 4 for sure, and we can have coffee, and I'd be happy to even spend half an hour to help you with whatever thing you were stuck with. So I can make a
Yeah, so
request.
you're asking for the right thing to meet your
Yeah,
need. Yeah. Well, there
exactly.
was one
Yeah.
phrase I feel you use, or it came from Marshall Rosenberg, around there are infinite ways to meet a need. Did I get it right?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that has really stuck with me, and it's this is just so beautiful because I think, especially in the world we live in, right? Everyone has lots of different worldviews and perspectives, and we are facing lots of challenges, right? Whether it's globally or in workplace, like family dynamics, whatever. Like, I think so much of the conflict is just people disagreeing on how things should be done or can solve problems. But in fact, there could be infinite ways to meet your needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think that conflicts, when they're stuck, there are more than anything a crisis of imagination,
Hmm.
of, like figuring out more ways that our needs could be met. We're so often stuck onto like it's black or white, it's like this or that. But I have done that process so many times, whether in workplaces or with partners, is like going down to, okay, what is this about for you? What is this about for me? What else are we not thinking about that could help meet all of those needs?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and kind of expand a little bit more the possibilities. But that does require what I call the courage of entering into the tension, of sitting a little bit in the fire of this discomfort of we have different perspectives here.
Yeah. You said something earlier. I do want to bring it back because you mentioned nervous system regulation, I think. And you need to take care of that before you can sit in the fire.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So there's
totally.
understanding yourself from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and being able to notice where you're at in terms of your nervous system and your capacity to engage. Are you resourced enough to have that conversation? I know, for example, with one of my coworker, we are trying to be very intentional of when we enter into a dialogue, which means like we're going to check in with each other. Like, do you have energy to talk about that right now? That dynamic. And sometimes we think we do, and we're like, ooh, halfway through, we're like, ooh, that's kind of a little hard, and we pause. But even asking yourselves, is this a right moment to have this conversation? Because particularly some work conversation, like if it's a challenging conversation, you don't want to have it 5 minutes before a really important meeting where you need to be really resourced and focused, right? And if somebody comes to you with wanting to talk about that, it's okay to say, no, not right now. I'm entering this room in 5 minutes. I would really be happy to talk about it over lunch tomorrow. But I think framing well conversation so that it gives us the best chances to stay regulated in our nervous system versus flip into the fight or flight kind
Yeah.
of, or like the shutdown. state.
Yeah.
Because in both of those spaces, we stop listening. This is what is really happening. We can't really hear each other anymore. Yeah. And a lot of people, what they're telling me is like, I want to find a way to express myself when I'm really angry, and it is a really hard place to express ourselves, when we are really angry. Is like I personally believe that I don't really want to express myself when I am in that space where I'm really angry. And some I have done it. Like, I think there's a way to learn more and more self-responsibility even in those moments of anger, but it's really hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard to stay self-responsible when we're really, fire.
Ooh, that's the word,
Yeah.
self-responsibility. Yeah. How would you describe that? Because for me, when I hear that, I'm like taking responsibility for like the impact of your actions, or I'm just so fascinated by that concept. How would you explain it?
For me, self-responsibility means being in the form of state where I'm aware that my emotions are mine and they're my responsibility, and that I I am able to taking self-responsibility in conflict means I am able to articulate what I'm going through, naming my own feelings and my own needs without blaming everybody else for what I'm experiencing. And so it means like I'm owning my own stuff. I'm owning that this is me. This is the way I react because of me, my own story, my own belief system, my own stuff. This is how I'm reacting right now. Somebody else might react differently.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what I'm doing in self-responsibility, I'm detaching you from being absolute cause of my state.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, when I'm taking self-responsibility, I'm saying you're saying and you're doing something. And there is something in me because of who I am, because how I'm built, because what I ate this morning, because how I slept, because of my relationship with my mother. I don't have to name all of that, but there's something in me that because of all of that, I'm reacting in that way right now. And this is what matters to me, and this is what I want.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Okay. I love all the different examples you gave because it is actually quite an expansive concept. Like each of us humans, we've got a lot going on, and
Yeah.
it's not for us to necessarily dump it on others, right? And there is that like caring for. I feel like there's also this aspect of it that's like there are things that I need to care for myself, and it's mine. Maybe I'm going off
Yeah.
track. I'm just very fascinated by this.
Well, what I hear in that is like there's a care for me in that, but there's also a care for the other person.
Yes.
Because if I'm not dumping my stuff on you, it's a form of care. It's a form of saying like, I own my thing and I can express whatever I have to say without making you at fault for everything. And the key, there's two reasons to do that. One is that it's liberating. First, because if you're not the absolute cause of all my problems and you're not going to change, then I'm not stuck, right? If I have more power in my own experience, then I'm more free and I'm more able to create the reality that I want to create. But also, there's this dynamic that if whenever I take my stuff and I'm trying to put it on you and to blame you for it, there's this instant reaction of defensiveness that people have when they receive blame or when they receive like this and you're the problem. And I'll call it the wall of defensiveness. Once the wall try to build, it's very hard to go through.
Yeah.
So taking self-responsibility also has that impact of if I arrive to someone trying to name in the workplace, an example can be trying to name that I really struggle with the way that this yearly report has been kind of formatted and built. If I'm arriving with self-responsibility is because this is the way I usually like it and this is the way works for my brain. It's much easier for the person to hear than it's like it's a poor report and it's been built in a way that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Such a big
You can see
difference.
how it's like it's a really huge difference because the person also actually have a chance to care from my experience if I express it that way. It's like, oh, your brain like has a hard time understanding it. Okay, it's important for me that we're both like aligned in the way we build those reports.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's work
So
together,
being
you
able
know?
to name your needs, it's an invitation for others to care for you. And in some ways, that can be quite vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's also it's vulnerable, and I think it's particularly hard in the workplace because the workplace has its inherent is an absolute right or wrong way to do things.
Mm.
And I think there are better practices. They are kind of guidelines that the organizations is giving, but all of those things, there's so many interpretations and so many ways that we are able to do the thing. And a lot of conflict that emerge in the workplace are a different interpretation of what is here in the organization's guideline, for example.
Yes, yes.
So I don't believe a lot of the time there is no absolute way
Hmm.
that is the absolute right way to do it.
Yeah.
There's still all of these different,
Yeah, I
approaches.
feel like we're definitely in a time where, there's a lot more focus on having policies and things like that to try and guide the workplace. But then there also needs to be care around how are policies interpreted and implemented, and how are people still involved rather than just it's this black and white thing. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because when it's kind of so dehumanized, then yeah, we kind of lose the way that humans actually relate to those policies.
Yeah. I feel like this is such a rich conversation. I just want to dive in and just ask, like, do you have any resources that you recommend for folks? I know you, of course, have a website, and I will be linking to it in the show notes. Like, even for me, I have a book behind me. This is like one of my favorite books this year, How to Have Anti-Racist Conversations by Roxy Manning. And
Yeah.
it created such like a clear framework to have really challenging conversations, at least a starting point to think about. The subtitle is Embracing Our Full Humanity to Challenge White Supremacy. But so much of it is just how do you have really hard conversations? And it starts with ourselves first. There's so many like pre-steps to actually engaging in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, this
Yeah.
is like one book that I learned about from you. Do you have any other like resources or places for folks to go learn more?
Yeah, so I do offer workshops for individuals if you just want to, if you're self-employed or if you want to come out of curiosity for your own personal life. I have a workshop coming up. I give multiple ones a year. I also go to organizations, so that's something that's always possible. I usually have a 2-day intro that I give in organizations. In terms of resources, on my website, there's actually a page with a lot of different books that are really interesting to read for the different areas, for individuals, for children's as
Mm.
well, and for working in organizations. So on my website, there is the about and resources, and there's a lot of different videos to watch that are interesting, TED Talks, but also YouTube channels. There's this list of books to read for adults about parenting and for children and for organizations. And one of them is called The Empathy Factor. That is by Mary Miyashiro. So this one is particularly for workplaces, but you can find a lot of other resources. And of course, I mean, Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, is, kind of the foundation book for this work.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I'll link to these resources from my show notes. This podcast really aims to encourage folks, if they are going through a transition period, they're feeling like nervous or scared for making that change and diving in. I think from what I've learned from you, like when we have a feeling, we can actually go deeper and try to uncover the need from the feeling. So for folks, if you are feeling scared, nervous, overwhelmed, whatever it may be, maybe you can try Myriam's like why, why, and see if you can get down to the needs. And then from there to tap into creativity of how to meet that need. Do you have anything to add? Like what if there's any like practical advice or encouragement you want to offer folks if they are navigating a challenging transition right now?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that on the website, I also have a feelings and needs list that yeah, suggest printing because those words have helped me a lot to kind of land onto what is really true for me. And there is something in the landing in what is really true for me and what matters that already helps our nervous system kind of regulate a little bit more and starting getting into action of what can I do to support myself now. One of the memory that I had, for example, from a big transition for me was like financial insecurity and fear, right? And just kind of taking the time to first just also be with the feelings and know that they will pass,
Mm.
right? Everything is just a wave, like life is a wave. And but that, like, for me, is like feeling that wave is the way to move through it and to have it not stick to me, but actually just embrace it and take the time with it. And one of the tricks that I use a lot with myself when I'm overwhelmed is kind of like saying a lot of course to myself. So like, of course, Miriam, it's really scary right now. What I'm going through is really scary. It's such a big transition. I don't have the stability yet. I'm in such an unstable place. Of course I'm scared, you know? Of course, I just kind of want to be held and reassured that it's all going to be fine, you know? And so I give myself a lot of like, the kind of validation we often try to find from the outside,
Hmm.
I think we can also give to ourselves. And when I say that to myself over and over again, I validate my own experience. I validate those big feelings, but I don't give them too much grip, because they are just a wave. They will pass and
Hmm.
I will back to a new ground eventually. So I think that reminder for me of waves and that everything passes sometimes helps me go through, difficult times when we feel we're stuck there forever. And also that because I've been going through big transitions in my life too, transitions have so much energy to them too, right? There's so much capacity for novelty and for new versions of ourselves to emerge, on the other side. So, and I know all of the people that are in big transitions know those things.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's, always easy to be in the midst of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. But and all, like, I'm really passionate. The last thing I want to say is like I believe in the power of network and relationships and that reaching out and trying to be as connected. And that's why I love the work that you do, Crystal, of like trying to connect people when they are moving through transition so that we don't feel alone in those moments of transition, so that we feel the support of a community of people. And even if it's one person, a coach or somebody who like is helping, giving us that listening ear, that reassuring ear, that kind of like the sense of not being alone in the process can be really
Yeah.
helpful too.
Yeah. And even what you described there, it could be giving yourself that hug, talking to yourself in the mirror, maybe you're like journaling, like find what works for you. Again, there's so many different ways to meet a need. And there's that self piece, but then there's the community piece because we all exist in relationships in community. I think it's
Mhm.
like when we think we're isolated, that's where there's more danger there to fall deeper. And if we
Mhm.
just ask for help and are able to express externally what you're needing, like there's such magic to invite others to support you as well. But I know that for you also are a very community minded person, and earlier you talked about imagination and creativity, and I know you are a artist and creative. Can you describe maybe like how you recharge outside of this relational work, what else you work on, and just to share a little glimpse into your life and how you meet your diverse needs?
Absolutely. Well, I recently moved to a place that is really nearby a forest, and that's one of the way that I recharge is being just walking outside with music. I also really love dancing, so I really love moving. Moving outdoors is something that really supports me and help me move also sometimes through big emotions. And that practice of movement through big emotions is something that had also led me to a lot of my artistic work. I'm also an artist in dance and theater, and a big part of my artistic practice has been around moving emotions and around how the body carries emotions, but also how movement can support us expressing those emotions and transforming those emotions too. And a big project that I am working on right now in my spare time is a show that is called Voices in My Body, that is very based on the relational work that I'm also doing with Reconnect. And we already have a version of the show that we have toured in many different places in Vancouver and Nanaimo and Victoria, and I'm very passionate about creating a V2 of the show and of evolving the show in a way that it touches more also on relationships and the way that different parts of us will emerge in relationships and how those parts inside of us are themselves in a certain relationship dynamic with each other.
So cool.
So I'm really, really interested in that and really excited about going back to the studio and starting from life. Basically, the way that we've built this show and the way that I want to continue building this show is going through really reflecting through the body on those life experiences. And one of the area I really want to explore is grief right now, and how grief moves through our bodies, and how grief is a wave, and how can we let our body feel and move with the wave versus try to resist the wave of grief, and trust that on the other side there is going to be something more calm and more grounding and more happy that also
Oh, wow.
is part of the
Yeah.
grief process. So
Grief is a really powerful wave that can knock you over for sure.
absolutely.
And there are so many sources of grief. You can have layers and layers of grief going on. I mean, like worry about what's happening in the world, maybe challenges at work, losing a loved one, your health, status changing. Like there's going to be so many complex layers. And I know folks often use the word wave to describe it. You can't control when it comes, and when it comes, it can be so powerful. So I'm so excited to see what comes out of the next iteration of your show and how you integrate all these parts of you. I love hearing it, because even hearing your journey today from a teenager whose dad is like practicing the skills on you and your cousins, to applying it as a project manager in scientific communications, as an artist now, incorporating the themes, and as a trainer. Oh, it's just so cool to see how aligned and integrated you are across your life.
Thank you, Crystal. It's precious to hear that feedback, because I think that is something that I've been, I would say, working really hard towards, of how to find a way to, and I think that is a challenge for a lot of people, is finding a way to live our passion in a way that is also sustainable for ourselves, right? And finding space for all the different parts of us. And to be real with you, I have so many different parts, and I'm making choices, and I still have 5 parts of me now, like, oh, but I want to sing more, and I want to do this more, and like, why are we not doing this anymore? And I'm like, okay, don't have time for everything.
Yeah.
And that, coming back to grief, is like every single choice is a grief process.
Yeah.
Every single choice we're making, letting something aside, and
Yeah.
it's not always easy to find that path. It's a lifelong process of like, okay, what is true to me now, and how do I both stay aligned while caring for all my basic needs?
Yeah.
Sustainability is so
And
important too.
grief isn't a bad thing. I think that's another thing
No.
I want to say. And underlying all the work you do, like with all the feelings, it's not like they're good feelings and bad feelings, right? Like they're human experiences.
Yeah. I really think that NVC is something that it gave me so strongly, is the capacity to see each feeling as so beautiful. And grief, particularly in the last couple of years, I've been more and more able to be in it and touch the beauty of it as I'm in it. Like grief is love, really, and like, just if I'm able to, at the moment that I'm in the grief, to touch into the love, then I'm just watching the grief through this lens of like, oh my God, I just love so much, I'm a beautiful human being that cares,
That's
so.
beautiful. I just want to say thank you again for joining and just sharing the beautiful person you are and the amazing work you do. So yeah, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you joining this conversation today.
Thank you, Crystal. Really enjoyed it too.
Thanks for listening to the Afterwork Hangout. If you enjoy honest conversations about career decisions and life choices, remember to subscribe to the Afterwork Hangout so you'll know when our next episode drops. And don't forget to leave a 5-star rating while you're at it. You can find a summary of this episode along with more information about our guests and resources that were mentioned at relocal.ca. That's RELOCAL.ca. If you take a look around the website, you'll also find blog posts, downloads, and community offerings to support your career development. I'm your host, Crystal Lee, and I'm always interested in hearing what topics you'd like to learn about. You can connect with me on Instagram at relocal.ca, or you can email me at crystal@relocal.ca. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to all the guests and supporters who make this podcast possible. This includes my podcast manager, Lindsay Curtis, and graphic designer, Alex Dewar, who created the podcast art. Thanks again for listening and sticking around. I hope you're more inspired and ready to make the moves that are right for you. See you at the next Hangout.